You getting enough here? Did you hear in these words? Right? Spirit's moving. Father, thank you that you're present by the Spirit here. Thank you that Jesus has been lifted up. We give you honor, Lord. We want to stay in the flow of what you have for us. Break us open. Fill us up. Clean us out. We just decree that we'll all walk out of here changed to be dangerous for good. Amen. All right. You know, it's always fun when things get rolling like that. It's like, okay. And by the way, those of you who don't know, a tongue is in some ways like a gem, like a diamond, because it's from the Spirit, right? And so depending upon how it's turned, you will see different things, you will hear different things, which is why you can have multiple interpretations. Even this picture up here kind of works a little bit like that. You would all have a little different interpretation if I asked you to speak to that, because it's imprinting on you in a different way, right? And so it's really fun to watch how Jehovah Sneaky moves. Yeah? Okay, just so we're clear on that. And we want to encourage that because you saw what the tongue loosed, right? Sometimes it just breaks things open. And a lot of times you only get part of it. A lot of times, at least for me, I get the first couple of words that I think he's doing, and I have to be willing to go ahead and speak those. And then the rest comes, which is a little bit hairy because it's like taking that first step off and you can't see where you're actually going to land, right? The Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade number. You know that, right? Right? At the end, the leap of faith, and he can't see that it's there until he makes the step, okay? Sometimes you got to do that. Okay, well, listen, rainbows, remnants, and resets, we need a new beginning, yes? Okay, we're actually a little bit ahead of the game because sundown on Sunday night, will be the movement into the next month. But I like to go ahead and have you ready for it, right? Why do we even do this? Well, because God still has a calendar, but sometimes I like to look at culture. Any of you know Baskin Robbins? How many of you remember the flavor of the month? Oh, yeah, right? And it was a flavor they put out for that. And so there's flavors to every month in our culture, right? You're not, now, why is this one for the month of October? Well, pumpkins, right? At least it's not some sort of trick-or-treat kind of thing. But also, every month in our culture has a flavor. Why is that? Why is it? Because they're not... Because what? God says something different, but there's a lot of stuff. See, a lot of the flavors of our months don't really have connection with God, right? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't in our months, in our culture. But bottom line, there's a bigger agenda with having you all think about trick or treat and everything else. And there can be an enemy strategy and everything else, but there's just a commercial strategy. Buy candy, buy this, right? It gets you in the mood, put a little competitive pressure. Okay, now you're doing this and you're spending money that's like so stupid and you just go. Boy, and when we hit December, wow, the birth of Jesus is just sort of an asterisk, right? The rest of it's, okay, what do you got to buy? Where are you going to go? Right? It creates a flavor. It's an overarching agenda about how to focus your thought, time, and money, and it's being pushed at you by the culture. And guess what? Most of us salute that, and we kind of get in line with it, right? Now, when we move into November, there's going to be a festive air about Thanksgiving. It's one of the few times when we get a little bit more connected in that, right? But there's other times we just miss it. Now, if that's going on in the culture, the question is this: what's God's flavor of the month? Because every month, prophetically, there's a calendar in Scripture when God will say in the first month or in the second or in the fifth month or whatever. Sometimes he gives them names, sometimes not. We believe he's put those in Scripture because, like the culture does, he has something that he wants us to focus upon, our thought, time, and money, because his calendar is prophetic. And when we align in time with his calendar, we get the blessing. Okay? There's certain blessing to align in the culture's calendar around Christmas because you can buy great things on sale, right? Or if you aligned with Amazon Prime Day. How many of you bought something on Amazon Prime? Oh, come on. I think there's more of you out there, but that's fine. There's some good deals. You align in time, you get the deals. God has set specific blessings down. He drops the plumb line. We're keeping that plumb line up here for a long time because it's one of the keys in this year, okay? It's an Aleph word about the plumb line. And so we're bringing it down in this month. So if I want to give you a single flavor for this month, here's what it is. Behold, I make all things new. You good on that? Okay. We need a new beginning, okay? We need to think about new beginnings. God has new beginnings, but there is a process of new beginnings. See, the issue is almost everybody wants a fresh start. Agreed? How many of you here would like a fresh start? Everybody except Anna. She's like, okay, I don't need one. Every day is a fresh start for her, right? Okay? Now, we want that, but so often we're unwilling to get in the process God has to get us ready for that. Are you clear on that? Okay, we'll get to that more, but I want you to remember this. Behold, I make all things new. Say, behold, I make all things new. Now put it here. Put your hand over your heart. Say, behold, Lord, make this new. Right? There's a lot of restoration that we need. There's stuff we got to break off. So let's keep going here. So if we look at the 8th biblical month, it's also linked then to the tribe of Manasseh, which is the 8th tribe. Why is it the 8th tribe? Because when God set the Israelites out in the desert, he created a new model. They had been anchored around the sun god Ra for all that time. And he said, I'm going to rearrange you now. I'm going to take the 4th in the line, and I'm going to make him first, and that was Judah, and then Issachar, and he goes around, and he reorders the tribes, just as he reordered months. Did you know that? In Exodus, God reordered the months. Exodus 12 says that. That's why in Genesis, those months are anchored in a 6-month difference, because they're anchored to creation. I won't go into all that. Some of you are like, what? Don't worry about it. You can talk to me, or you can go back in some other teachings. But when we get to Exodus, the Lord says to Moses, you will start numbering the months from here because everything is made new, right? And the tribes got reordered, and Manasseh is the 8th tribe. So references to the 8th month events and tribe, there's 150 total references in Scripture. And that creates the flavor of the month. Do you get this? And so as we align with him, we pick up that. He gives us focus, shows us how to spend time, energy, money. So the number 8 in biblical is a new beginning. Most of you know that. We'll cover a couple things why. The flood, they load and enter the ark. The flood starts. They stay in it for a year and 10 days. Okay, talk about being in isolation, right? Quarantine for a year and 10 days on a ship that's moving, with animals that are being animals. Who's going to clean up that mess, Noah? I don't know why I built the thing. Send Shem down, okay? Then Noah, a year and 10 days in this month, emerges. Zechariah gives a very powerful prophecy, and one of the keys in it is, return to me and I will return to you. It is the completion of Solomon's temple in this month, but interestingly, it's not the dedication. There's a new beginning in that. Jeroboam takes things completely sideways with Israel and the golden calf, and the 8th tribe of Manasseh, and the key figure that we know in the tribe of Manasseh is Gideon, right? Quick over. I'm going to roll through this stuff. You okay? So 8th month, 8 in Scripture linked. Oh, by the way, yes, the biblical name is Bull. Say Bull. Okay. Means rain or showers. It's about alignment, because typically in Israel, October is this time of these first showers. They're very, very critical, very important to the land. But go here. Here are the 8 links to new beginning. There were 8 people on Noah's Ark to start over. The 8th day was when the sons of Abraham were circumcised. The 8th day, you present the firstborn in the temple. The 8th day, the priests emerge after being consecrated. The 8th day, Jesus was circumcised. Do you get this? So you good on this? Real quick? That's why the number 8 is connected to that. New beginnings. You notice a couple of phrases back here? Circumcise, circumcise, circumcise. You get this? Okay. 8 is linked to circumcision too. You get this? Hello. Okay. What does it mean to be circumcised? It means to be cut short or blunt. Okay. Come on, get the laughs out of the way right now. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is my covenant which you will keep between me and you and your seed after you. Every male child will be circumcised. He that is 8 days old will be circumcised. Why is that? It's a mark of what? Sign of the covenant. Right. It's a sign. And it's a new beginning for that new child, right? 7 days old on the 8th day. Okay, you come into it, and even now, we need to mark you rightly so that you're set. But there's a cutting off of that. Abraham, by the way, was 99 when he was circumcised. Okay. I'm just going to keep going here because if I give you guys any room here, I'm going to lose the room. In Deuteronomy, this is where the Lord speaks and says, circumcise the foreskin of your heart and no longer be stiff-necked. And this is where it moves from that physical into the spiritual. In fact, in Jeremiah 4, circumcise yourselves to the Lord and take away the foreskins of your heart, men of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, or my fury will come like fire and burn that no one can quench because of the evil of your actions. Now, what I said, everybody wants a fresh start. Not everybody wants what's involved in a fresh start. Do you get this? It's not just walk into it with all the old crap and garbage and habits and everything else. Something has to get cut. Something has to be separated. And if you think it's just about for you or just about a person, here we go. Here's what I call the big C. The entire nation, once they had crossed the Jordan, at that time the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the sons of Israel a second time. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeath Haraloth. The entire nation, while they were where? No, not in the wilderness. No. It's in the promise. It's in the promise when they're surrounded by their enemies. They have crossed over en masse. And the first thing he does is wound them. For this reason, when the circumcising of the whole nation was finished, they remained in their places in the camp until they were healed. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. And so the name of that place is called Gilgal to this day. What's important here is reproach, scorn, shame, this Hebrew word. The root is to pull off, expose, be exposed. There's areas of shame. There's areas of reproach. The whole reproach of Egypt was that whole last season, and it was a reproach that they had really set on the name and reputation of God. They were carrying it, but it's really because there was such a delay that back in Egypt they were going, well, you know, that God was pretty powerful. He got him out of there. Clearly, he didn't have what it took to really get him through there. It took him 40 years. Must have had to rest up. You get this? There's a lot of reproach of Egypt that goes on in the church today. Yeah, you say you serve a loving God. You say he's powerful. I'm not sure I really see it. Seems like you're more just in bondage to religion, some form of slavery. You get the reproach getting rolled away, the new beginning. Part of what happens, we enter into this new month. We got to let that come down and move the reproach. The first use of this, by the way, in Scripture is always important. The first time God uses it in his word. And she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. Rachel is saying this of Joseph, which is interesting because he's the father of Manasseh. And that's going to flow in here again. Here's another reference. And David spoke to the men that stood by him. What shall be done for the man that kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? He won't even use his name, Goliath. He differentiates. This one is not under the covenant sign, yet he's in the covenant land. Do you get this? David's going, there's something here. And he's this little, whatever, maybe not that scrawny, but 14-year-old kid. and everybody else is just quaking in their boots. Rolling the reproach back takes confrontation. And so the cutoff comes, the process to move into a new beginning pretty much always requires that something is cut off. You get why? Because otherwise you're bringing that same disease, that same baggage, that same attitude, everything else into this new, oh, it's a new start. And God's like, nah. Hello? Thank you for praying for me, doing that wedding out there. Did a wedding out in Central California on this big ranch, and it was a good experience, but most of these folks had very little clue about Jesus or their scripture. But I mentioned briefly about leaving and joining and becoming one, right? The scriptures, leave, cleave, become one. And that critical part about leaving, you got to be able to leave. You got to be able to let that old thing. You can't be getting in marriage and going, oh, remember when I was single and that just ain't going to do you any good. Dragging the old habits, dragging too much parental and family issues and everything else into it. Not good. Couples got to have a separation there. There's a cutting off. So in the new beginning, ask God what needs to go. Was it early, Penny, you were saying about giving it all? If you haven't given it all, there's a link in there. Things that we're not giving, usually because we're holding on to, because we're just not sure we can really trust him. Yeah? You good so far? This is moving towards a new beginning. Say new beginning. New beginning. Okay. But if I just say, hey, it's all about getting a new beginning, you're going to be like, okay, and you're not going to get what the scriptures are really teaching. Okay, so we'll keep going. Because this is what happens. Okay? The flood narrative is anchored in this month. Specifically, the animals get loaded, the showers and floods begin, judgment is loosed, and the Noah 8 are loaded, and God shuts them in. It's very interesting. We could spend all evening in just one part of this, but we tend to read it through real fast. And you gotta take some time and get some good commentaries, and they're not all Christian. Sometimes they're Jewish commentaries to pick up the flavor of all the nuance that goes on. But one of the things everybody talks about just how obedient Noah is, but the language in there when the Lord says you need to build this ark for yourself, there's an implication in the language is because you have already self-isolated, so I'm going to let you keep doing that. And in Isaiah, it talks about the floods of Noah, the waters of Noah. They feel that he bore some responsibility that came, that he hadn't been out and about enough trying to get people to change and to shift. And the rabbis teach it took him 120 years to build the ark. Christian commentators will say, well, between 40 and 80 and maybe 120, but a long time. And then there's this part, which is interesting. God commands him to go in on a specific day, but if you read it, it's not until the waters start to reach up on their ankles that they go into the ark. What was that? Hello, right? You got to get. Noah might have been a little reticent to just go and get on the ark. So you always think Noah is this incredibly obedient, immediate kind of guy. I wonder what kind of conversations went forward on 120 years, right? You get that word. Have you ever seen that one with, what was the one where it's a modern day Noah? Evan Almighty. Okay, great. I want you to build me an ark. Okay, right? Big thing of gopher wood, everything else. How willing are we when God comes and says, I'm going to do a new beginning, but I need you to do this. This is going to be your circumcision off of the world, of your reputation, of everything else. I mean, you realize what Noah had to give up. Everything, right? To get that. There's so many other nuances in there, like God appointed the animals 2 by 2, but then he said to Noah, go and take 7 of the clean animals, because the clean animals were going to be used as a sacrifice. And you don't just sacrifice something that came to you by God. You need to put in some of your own juice. So Noah has to go out and take those in. He's got to bring them in. Do you get this? So when he makes an offering to the Lord, it's something he's worked for. Okay, we'll keep going. You good? But this thing. And then God shut them in. I love the fact.
Can I add something to
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
Okay. there was a bond there. He loved those animals.
And then,
And then he had to sacrifice them.
did y'all hear that? For those that couldn't on the web, she's saying that it was over a year that Noah was taking care of all those animals. So when he went to sacrifice them when he came out, they're animals that he would have bonded with and connected with over in the care. Yeah, would have loved them. Yeah. This part's important. They don't just pull up the door, God shuts them in. It took 120 years or 40 or whatever you want to come up with an estimate, but it took a very long time to create this model. But it's God who sets the timing and he sets them in. And it's on the 17th day of this month that happens. And then a year and 10 days later, the 8 come out. The commands are given to them about being fruitful and multiplying. The covenant sign of what is given? Rainbow, right. And by the way, do you know that the rainbow is not principally for us? When you read the word, it is first that God says, and I will see this sign. It's first and foremost for God. It's God's sign for God and also an encouragement to us. And then an altar and sacrifice is made, because when you're in a new beginning and God's brought you into that, praise, worship, and honoring what he's done is always appropriate. We good so far? I'm going to keep rolling here. So, this may be sometimes what is going on in this month, just to let you know. Don't think God landed the flood in this month and think that it has nothing to do with you personally. Yeah? Deep issues always require deep cleansing, right? The reason that God had to so start over is the corruption within mankind had grown so great. It's like, okay, we got it. Now, sometimes there's deep waterworks that we have to go with. The deep work is to give us a new beginning. So don't fight it, but walk it out. You good on this? Okay. You're all a little quiet here tonight. So you were all riled up earlier, and now you're like, so I got to make sure. 8th tribe, Manasseh. How many of you got the ping, by the way, and read it? Okay, we got about half or so like that. The other half you have to stay and do the dishes. Tribe of Manasseh, right? Who is Manasseh born to? Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And by the way, Robert Heidler has a great theory. I think it's wonderful. I think it's probably right. Is that Potiphar, the priest, was probably Potiphar. And once Pharaoh had winnowed out exactly what happened, he said, you're going to give him one of your daughters. Okay? But Joseph, after all of the grief, after being so betrayed by his brothers, thrown in the pit, sold into slavery, serving in Potiphar's house, then accused falsely, thrown into prison, interpreting dreams for people, being forgotten, being forgotten, being forgotten. And he gets elevated up into Pharaoh's right hand, but that's not what cinches the deal for him. The new beginning for him comes with his firstborn. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, it is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. See, now's when that clean cut kind of comes down. Do you get this? Why is that important? For this, Masa means causing to forget, but Amal is the trouble. Toil, wearying effort, worry, whether of body or mind, grievousness, iniquity, labor, mischief, misery, pain, perverseness, sorrow, toil, travail, trouble, and wearisome. Part of what you got to let God cut off and remove is some of that burden, okay? It's not only his troubles, but all of his father's household. Some of your troubles specifically anchored into family issues. This is a time to let those be dealt with, okay? Get clean. Get clean of that. Let it come down. Let God set you free from that. Do you want a fresh start? Yes. Okay. Are you willing to let go what you need to? Oh, now the first one was a big yes. The second one was kind of muted. Do you all want a fresh start? Yes. Are you willing to let God remove the old? Yes. There you go. Okay. You know what's funny is when someone goes like this, yes. Okay, your lips are moving. I hear you saying yes, but there's something wrong. We do that a lot, right? Okay. You tracking? Okay. And then, of course, the most famous of all those is Gideon. Again, we could spend all night even in just one part of this. I would encourage you, those were long readings I gave you in the ping to dealing with the flood narrative and dealing with Gideon. Go back, please, meditate, like Rebecca was pulling out there, specifics out of that, and the Spirit will apply it to you. The reason I give you that in advance is because we believe this is what's living and active, right? And to get it in you and perking in you does amazing things. And God will stir up things that I never thought of. And they wouldn't even be right for me, but they are for you. Yeah? So hang out there in this month. Keep thinking about new beginning and then watch how God did those things. So a couple things on Gideon. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abizrite, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress in order to hide it from the Midianites. What's the context? Give me the primary emotion in that context. Fear, right? A lot of hiding going on right now. A lot of winnowing wheat in the winepress. The winepress is in the low part of the hill. Where you're supposed to winnow the wheat is up on top of the hill where there's lots of wind. So you throw it up and the wind blows the chaff. Right now, most of the people are threshing their wheat that are believers down in the winepress out of sheer terror and fear. Maybe it's not the Midianites. It's being politically correct or any number of other things, and so we hide in that. But it is in the midst of that and in the midst of the hiding that the angel of the Lord appears to him and said, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." Right? What? And what's his response? Praise God, I'm your guy. No, what's his response? Well, if that's true, where you been? Well, you know, come on. Where's the God our fathers told us about with all the miracles and signs and wonders? I mean, you just ain't showing up, right? When God appears in the midst of a situation where we're afraid and hiding out, so often he's got to speak a word of identity and see if we're willing to grab it or not. And every time God gives a promotion to us, it will be tested. Best example in the world is Jesus. Right after the Spirit comes on him in his baptism, he's out in the wilderness, and the enemy comes and said, if you are the Son of God. Right? It's a question about the identity, the mantle. Are you going to own that? New beginnings will often involve that God's going to speak into you something new about your identity. Fresh start usually requires a fresh name. Yeah? Your name is Simon, but I'm going to call you Little Rock. Right? On and on. Your name is Abram, but I'm going to call you Abraham. Your name is Sarai, but I'm going to call you Sarah. And that word, he puts a hey into each. He puts the breath into each name. So, new beginnings usually yank us out of our comfort zone. That's exactly what was happening there. Even if you're miserable, you're often more happy in your misery in a comfort zone than you will be in leaving that misery and moving into risk. Does that make sense? Oh, let me just sit here. Oy vey. I can't do anything. I'll just sit here alone in the dark. Right? It's a question about how certain mothers, how does a mother change a light bulb? Says to the kid, it's okay, I'll just stay here in the dark. Some of you know, that works pretty good, right? Yeah. Secondly, God will speak into new identities during a time of fresh beginnings, okay? Keep going here. Then the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff. So remember where we are now, right? I'm jumping ahead. Gideon says to him, okay, if it's really you, let me go make a sacrifice, right? So it takes a while. We could clock it. It was hours later and he comes back. Angel gives him instructions. He's not still real sure it's an angel, right? But in the midst of that, he puts this out, pours out the broth, everything else, and the angel takes the tip of the staff and sets it down, and what happens? Yeah. Then the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened bread, and the fire rose out of the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread, and the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. Would that be good for you? You know, I mean, you don't think you could use a sign like that? What would you do with it? This is kind of the right response right here. Now, Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord, so Gideon said, "Alas, O Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." There's nothing like the power of a good, holy fear to motivate us. So, Lord, in this new beginning, I just say, bring the holy fear back to the remnant. Again, one of my favorite lines from someone, I don't know who coined it, but is that we become far too familiar with a God we don't even know. Right? Okay. Then the Lord said to him, "Peace be with you. Do not fear. You shall not die." So Gideon did what? Built an altar. Where have we seen that before? With Noah. He built an altar there to the Lord and called it "The Lord is Peace." That's Jehovah Shalom, or Yahweh Shalom. That's an important altar for you in this time right now. You all need to find your altar of Jehovah or Yahweh Shalom, right? Shalom means peace. It means nothing missing, nothing broken, wholeness, okay? You need to get that. That God is on your side in this. Okay, so a little bit more on Joshua. Oh, there's the build an altar. Worship is the key to all new beginnings. So how key is worship this month? Very, very, very. And by the way, like Rebecca said, when he tears, well, I'll get to that in a second. Well, no, I'll jump ahead. When he tears down the altar of the Father, right, he uses the Asherah pole as the firewood to the altar of the Lord. There's a burning of the old, the consuming of the old that needs to go, can't stay. So be ready to establish an altar. Is this too vague or are you getting it? Okay? You're going to listen to the Lord. You're going to say, "Lord, what do you need to cut off? What's the old? What do you need to roll back? What reproach have I brought on your name? What reproach am I bearing from something else that I'm still carrying? You've forgiven me. I'm free from that garbage, but somehow I'm still bearing it when I come in the door." Hard to get a new beginning when you're just still dragging that ball and chain from the last season, right? Time to let the grace come to cut it off. And then what is cut off? Tear down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the wooden image that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord your God on top of this rock in the proper arrangement. This was a massive altar. Okay, it's estimated that the altar to Baal was probably between 15 and 30 feet across. It was a raised stone platform. This was not just a few rocks. Okay, this was a major thing. It's why it takes him 10 men to pull it down. And of course, Gideon, now full of faith, does it when? At night. Or you could just say it's just smart. God didn't say you got to do it in broad daylight. Just tear it down and build another altar, okay? So we got to be not so quick to judge how that works, because Gideon risked more than... because he was tearing down not only the community altar, but the altar of who? His father. Do you remember about God has caused me to forget troubles of my father's household? Do you see? There's a severing that has to come down between that old stuff, that old idolatry, and everything else. If you need more information on that, we've got other stuff in the teachings on online that Kim's done. Okay, you got to break any generational stuff that's coming down. The other thing that's interesting is that word on top of this rock. That word in Hebrew actually means stronghold. There was a stronghold that had been built there because of the idolatry that his father supported and the community was all involved in. You get that? You're wondering why that stuff was coming in? There was a stronghold right there. Gideon was in the position where he could actually tear it down overnight, but it took 10 men. You get the idea from that. It was not a small thing. Okay. And so by that, it's rolling the reproach off. Yeah? But it's also this. Often when God wants to get us into the new, can you see that's an open door? Okay. When he wants to get us into the new, the issue is when we get right up to the top, often what we have to do is this. That's what Gideon did. There was no going back at that point. You get that. From that point on, he's got a new name. In fact, they want to kill him right then, right? And he gets a new name. Let Baal deal with him is the actual translation, right? Because his father says, no, you're not going to kill him. Let Baal deal with him. But there is a thing about, sometimes we've got to literally burn off the old. See, when he put that Asherah pole in there and ignited it, there was a burning off. Cortez, right, talked about what he did when they got to the new land, is he burned the ships. So many people want a new beginning and want to keep the other option open. I'm with you, God. Sure, right there. My other hand, what other hand? I'm right here. None of us have that issue. Good. Okay. There's no going back. See, the idea about a new beginning is that you got to be willing to just really cut off and release the old. For a new beginning, there has to be an old ending. Don't just try to add the new thing. Jesus talks about that. If you try to sew a new patch on an old coat, it doesn't work. You try to put new wine into old wineskins. Okay. Keep going. And by the way, that was not enough, right? I'm just skipping ahead on a few things because I want to make sure I'm getting the point here with Gideon, right? Because Gideon goes through fear, right? Then he's got the fire, and then he runs into the fleece, okay? Many a sermon on the fleeces. Let me give you my 2 cents on that. Number one, everybody said fleeces aren't good. I go, why do you so limit what God can do sometimes? There are times when a fleece is valid, particularly when he's telling you to mobilize an entire small army against an overwhelming force. There are times. I don't know what conversation went between God and Noah. For those of you who used to listen to Bill Cosby and do his thing on Noah, it's wonderful because it captures a comical way about what on earth did that look like? What are you building an ark when there wasn't any place to put it? 450 feet long? Would you mind getting this thing out of my driveway? It's one of the Cosby lines. But one of the things that he does with Gideon, after Gideon goes, okay, I'm with you. God says, well, it's time to downsize. So Gideon blows the horn, right, to summon the tribes to warfare. Actually, there's just 3 tribes that he calls, and they're the ones that are closest in proximity. But what's going to happen is this. He gets 32,000 men show up. We know from later in Judges that there were 135,000 that they were facing, which means the ratio is 1 to 4. How many of you would be willing to go into battle with that? Okay, that's pretty, right? That's pretty risky. God says, let's do a little more resource reduction here. So anybody who's afraid gets to leave. And this is what it gets down to. Now we have a 1 to 13 ratio. The other means they have 125,000 more fighting men. Yeah, but you all know that's not enough. But again, for us to get the context, I always want to give you a visual, because sometimes you need to know that when you feel very much alone in who you are and how you're following, sometimes God's just exactly right in the middle of that. Because this is what it ends up looking like. That's what it ends up with, a ratio of 1 to 450. It's okay if the first 40 don't kill you, the next 140 will. If they don't kill you, then the next 250 might, right? Yeah. I'm doing this to show you that this is God's way of judo flipping what the enemy sends. So in the midst of things that we're facing now as a nation and the craziness and the fact that there seem to be fewer in some ways who really get what's going on, you have to understand that God loves to take just the 300 and throw them against 135,000. It is the remnant of the remnant. And that one person there, so you know, when you go from 32,000 to 300, it's less than 1%. And that's less than 1% of all those who are willing even to come out for war. There's a whole boatload more who just stayed in their homes, didn't even want to come to the field. But this is us. This is you. You're the less than 1%. The remnant of the remnant that God says, okay, now I've destined for you to do this. I've destined to give you 3 tools. I'm going to give you a torch. I'm going to give you a shofar, a horn, and I'm going to give you a voice. But the question is the remnant arising? Is the remnant arising? And we're seeing that we are. Okay? Now, you got to remember this, and I've gone through this in other teachings. I do not believe that those 300 were super spiritual or super physical beings. Okay? There's a lot. Now, the first 22,000 split because they're afraid. He says, if you're afraid at all, go home. It's okay. There's no issue. But then he's down to 10,000 to 300, and it's simply by the way they drink, and all sorts of spiritual things have been made about it. I think God's just having a lot of fun. This isn't about, okay, we're going to run them through battle drills. We're going to have them sprint, and the first 300 are the ones I'm going to take. No. If you're, taller than 5'3" or whatever, it's nothing that. Let's see them drink water. Really? Yeah. Okay. Easy way, right? But I think God is so clear because he wants to make it clear. It's not about them, it's about him. Give me 300, or in another case, give me 8, the Noah 8, and I will start a whole thing. Give me 12. Give me 11. I'm fine. Give me 11 flakes. Right? Mixed up, bonehead, normal kind of, non-spiritual, just watch what I can do. Watch this. Okay? That's us, folks. That's us, sorry. But it's not about us, right? It's not about us. It's about him. It's about what he's doing. So is the remnant arising? And that 1 to 450? I do have it here. By the way, do you know what the population of the United States is? It's about 328 million, which means if we did that ratio, then God would be looking for 1 million people. You see what I'm saying? If we did the 300 to 1 or 400, whatever. Actually, I think I did the math wrong on that. No, actually I did. It's 450 divided into that. Anyway, there are more than 1 million of those who are really stirred by what's going on in this nation. There are more than 1 million that are crying out and saying, God, we don't have the answers. We've screwed up so many things. We, the church, have missed it. We have not engaged the conversation well. We've not stood in truth. We've not stood in truth in love. We've thrown facts. We've thrown accusation. We have not welcomed people fully for who they are, but then stood our ground and that God wants you to shift into what he's got for you for kingdom. He loves you. Come as you are, but then let him change you. We haven't held the tension of grace and truth. But 1 million have turned. Do you agree that? More than enough in the Gideon math to shift it. So the other question is, will the remnant vote? I was reading a thing by Cheon Some of you may know, may not, but he was just quoting the fact that those who say that they're evangelical Christians, only half of them are even registered to vote. Okay. I don't know how they self-qualify with that, but a lot of times that's not the best determinant. I mean, are they walking with Jesus? Do they have the truth in them? So the question comes that, what's your torch? What's your shofar? And what's your shout? I'm going to put this for you so that you take this before the Lord. But right now, I just encourage you, your torch is that prayer, okay? That prayer, your focus, you're bringing the light to it, okay? Your shout, what is your shout? What is the victory shout? What are you declaring over this nation? What are you declaring over things? You have power. In the tongue is the power of death and life. It's interesting. We always want to say life and death, but God reorders it death because that's often what we tend to go. Oh, things really suck. Oh, it's this. Death, death, death. Our life, it's crazy, but God's in this. He's shifting. There are people gathering. The Sean, what's his last name? I can never. Voigt, yeah. Oh, there's so much debate about how to say his name. I'm sure. Oh, it's spelled wrong. You know, and the gatherings. And then it's funny just to watch the media. Nashville is looking into Christian organization having meetings out without a permit. Well, it's a protest. It's a praise protest. Why are you going to put a different qualification on us than if we go out and start smashing things? Anyway, this is key in this month because Gideon is Manasseh. Manasseh is about the new beginning, the 8th tribe. Shofar, light, torch, and your voice, your shout. So Noah and Gideon, right? Two very different personalities that God works through to bring about new beginnings. They both found grace. You know, in the midst of all the crazy that was going on, it says Noah found grace. When the angel shows up to Gideon, he says, the Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor. You got to first let the Lord speak into you about who you are to him, that you've found grace, you've found favor. Yes, there's a new beginning, but not just for new beginning's sake, because you found favor with him. He wants you to start new. And this is the time that we really got to get it. Both took huge risks in the transition. Any question about that? Tear down your father's altar, and then come to battle. You start out with a 4-1 disadvantage, and you go down to 450-1. And read through the whole narrative. It's wonderful because then right before he goes into battle, Gideon's even ready to go. He's willing to be obedient. And God says, you know, just in case there's any concerns, I want you to go down to the camp and listen. Right? And just by coincidence, he gets down there and one man is sharing with the other, I had this dream about this barley loaf came rolling in. Okay. Right? I mean, you got to love that God will speak encouragement to you about new beginnings. Obedience. Sometimes it's full and partial. Like I said, Noah didn't actually get into the ark when God said. He waited till the rain started enough. Read the text. What else do I need to show you, Noah? Get your butt up the ark. And of course, everybody Gideon, right? All this, well, maybe, but Gideon is a mighty man of valor. God worked new beginnings, but they both had to align, right, in time for that to happen. So here's some quick things. The old has to end. So the old must end. You want a new beginning in some area? You got to let the old go. Hello. Y'all looking at me, and there's some nods, and some of you just don't know what you're saying yes to, okay? Deep cleaning is often required. You have to step into your means of deliverance. What do you mean I got to build this and step into this? What do you mean I got to tear down this and do that? Yes, that's the means by which we get this through. Well, God, can't you just change my heart right now? I have people, why don't you just reach down and do that? You know, a lot of times I think he will, but the question is how much of our heart's desire is really anchored there. If we're still doing this, I want the new beginning, God. Well, that's just a safety hold. Why? Yeah. Hello. You cut off old habits, connections. Not all deliverance in the transition is quick. If you think you want this new beginning, maybe. You got to remember, Noah went in for his new beginning, and he was in there for how long? A year and 10 days. Sometimes you step into something that is only meant to transition you. This is a start of new beginnings. Don't think that that means you're actually going to get fully into it. You may. It may happen fast, just so we're clear. God's God. But don't be ticked off. Wow, God, this closed. I ended that, but now I'm in this. Sometimes to get you to the new beginning, God has to put you in a transitionary model, like the ark. The ark was not the model for his new life, was it? Okay. Stay on God's timing. We don't want to move early. Don't delay. We always got to be prepared to move and change. Build your altars, and specifically the one that's Jehovah Shalom. Jehovah Shalom. Don't despise small starts. 300 to save a nation, and 8 to save a world. You got to let that. Okay, that's God's math. God's math. Watch this. Watch me take this ruddy little kid with a slingshot. Receive the grace to forget. This is not divine amnesia. You still know those things happened, but they no longer carry the pain and the baggage. Clearly, Joseph didn't completely forget about his brothers, because when they show up a little while later, he's having a lot of fun with them. He's got to see if they've changed. God may need to hide you for a season. That's another thing that happens this month. God shuts them into the ark for a year and 10 days. Sometimes it happens, okay? But it's, where is it leading? To a new beginning. But the other thing, like Gideon, he may move you right now into the heat of a fight. We're in a fight now, yes? Question is, are you using the tools you've been given? You want a fresh start for this nation? Okay. There's a lot going on. Okay. By the way, what day of the week, what day did Jesus rise from the dead? What day? What day? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What day? It was the first day of the week. And on the first day of the week, Mary went out to da-da-da-da. Boy, you guys are really illiterate. Just for that, Abigail's going to require you all stay afterwards, and she's going to start. It was the first day of the new week. Yeah, well, the reality is it was actually the 8th day of his passion. Do you get this? That even what Jesus went through was tied to a new beginning, right? We talk about the passion of the Christ. It's about the week that leads up, okay? And all he goes through. But there comes a time when something had to die, the old had to die, and something had to be rolled away. The reproach of the grave and of the crucifixion had to be rolled off. Do you get that? The new beginning happened on an 8th day. And so the remnant of the remnant was restored to save the world. So now it's not just 8, it's 1, right? So the normal way we see things is a start and a finish. In this time, you got to get it shifted that first you got to finish something. So then you can start. Paul said, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. Every new beginning requires an old ending. Okay? And one more caption. Life begins at the end. Okay? It's the end of yourself, the end of where just you want it, the end of where it was, you have to. I'm making this clear, right? For this reason, everybody wants a fresh start. Everybody wants a new beginning. But we're just unwilling to let go of that old security. Here's what the rest of the slide actually shows. Okay. Let me hit you with one other thing here, because I always pay attention to God's timing. What's the most important date you see up there? Sorry. Yeah, what day is that? What? Boy, you guys are so well informed. November 3rd, right? Golly. Single most, I believe this has been, hello. Single most important election that we've probably ever seen. The things that are in the balance, things that are going down. It's in a volatile time. So what's very interesting, remember that I told you, when did the flood start? Any of you remember it? On what day? It was on the 17th of this month. Do you know when that starts? It starts at sundown on election night. That aligns, because see, remember in the biblical calendar, right? The new day starts at sundown. So if we align with God's calendar, it's just saying that's the evening of that day when the flood starts in it. 40 days later is when it ends. This is a deep cleansing time zone. Now, somebody else can speak into that clearly and say, this is what's going to, I don't know for sure, but I'm just paying attention. Now, I also know that they came out on the 27th of the same month. It was a year and 10 days later. Sundown is the 27th, which means they stepped out into the new model on the 14th for this month, for November rather. I'm going to watch carefully. I'm going to see what's coming down and what's getting cleansed come election night. Sundown here is about 5:45 on that night. I looked it up just to be curious. The results will start rolling in after the polls start to close, right? At least the reported, because they do it on the exit polls. But last time, people weren't telling them what they did. So what they thought was going to happen and what happened. Were any of you, I remember 4 years ago going to bed going, okay, well, I guess we got Hillary as the president, right? Woke up in the morning. What? That's what's making a lot of people really nervous. So we're going to move now. We always move into the Lord's table, okay? Because he said, this do in remembrance of me. We align, we receive, and we become new, right? That's the whole thing. And in this, you want to receive the grace to be able to end what God needs to end, and you need to receive the grace for a new beginning. You see, you got to have both kinds.
I just want to say something where the Lord has had me concerning his blood, and we're talking about being purified and cleansed and walking like that. And I was looking at the wine here for the communion, and just some things I was having a hard time forgiving myself of in the past. And the Lord kept saying to me, how powerful is my blood? Weigh what that thing is that you can't forgive yourself of, or what that thing is that you can't do, or what you feel like it is. Weigh that against how powerful my blood is. He said, how powerful is my blood? My blood can heal you, deliver you, cleanse you, restore you, make you whole. So I feel it in the spirit. There's at least one person in here who's really struggling with some things of the past. You can't forgive yourself. You don't believe God can forgive you. How powerful is his blood? It can heal, it can cleanse all. And I pray that as we take communion, if you're watching this at home, get some tea if you don't have any wine, but take communion. Get a cracker and get some tea, but take communion. How powerful is his blood? Let him touch you, let him heal you, let him cleanse you. Reach for him.
Amen. God might have you be taking communion daily for a while here. Sometimes he's got to just remind us again, okay? He's very kind. You saw how long he gave Noah, right, to build the new model and get his butt in the ark. You saw it with Gideon, right? You haven't read that. And Gideon is a mighty man of valor. But you got to get the grace to leave what was And you got to get the grace for a new beginning, right? And we are not alone. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let his enemies be scattered. Let the righteous be glad. Yes, let them rejoice with gladness. God is triumphed mightily. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let God arise. Let his enemies be scattered. Let the righteous be glad. Yes, let them rejoice with gladness. God is triumphed mightily. Let God arise. 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 Hey!
Lord, we bless you. We thank you for a new beginning. We say that what you've started here and the old stuff you're rolling off and the new place you're setting us and the clean start, we receive. We are that remnant. We will stand as with Gideon. We will raise the torch. We will sound the horn, the shofar, and we will shout your victory. You love these odds because it shows it's all about you. It's your kingdom. This is your nation. Your will be done. Your kingdom come. To the glory of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.